Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I start, I'm going to request that people are quiet. There's a lot of noise going on, and if we're not quiet, then we're not going to be able to benefit, and others are not going to be able to hear. So I need absolute silence. Until there is silence, I don't think I'm going to start. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين نبينا وحبيبنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمد بن عبد الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين وأصحابه الغر الميامين أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم. After praising Allah Jalla fi Ula and sending salutations upon our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, we proceed. I had many things that I wanted to say this evening. However, I've just been told that my time is very limited. But if I'm going to say something, and I'm going to remind myself and all of you of something, it is precisely what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala reminded us of in the Quran. When Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala commanded us, and He commanded the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to remind the believers, what did Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala remind us of? He Jalla wa Ala, He says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ رِزْقٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ يُطْعِمُونَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينُ فإن للذين ظلموا ذنوبا مثل ذنوب أصحابهم فلا يستعجلون فويل للذين كفروا من يومهم الذي يوعدون. Allah said, remind, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, for verily that reminder, it benefits the believers. And then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, straight after that, He says, I have not created jinkind and mankind except to worship me alone. It is as if Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is saying to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, remind them of their purpose of life, because mankind, insan, who forgets Allah, who's kathirun nisyan, he's even going to forget that, he's going to be distracted from it, he's going to turn away from it, he may neglect it and indulge in other things that do not benefit him. Remind them of Allah, remind them that they need to worship Allah, that they need to glorify Allah, that they venerate Allah alone. Because all these worldly matters that may distract you from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, they are in the hands of Allah. Seek it from Allah, be with Allah, turn to Allah, be mindful of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will take care of your affairs. And that's precisely the advice of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He gave to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. As a young boy, he's with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says to him these great statements that he's attached to Allah, he's connected to Allah, and he knows Allah, and he seeks all of goodness from Allah, and he relies upon Allah Azza wa Jal. He said to him, احفظ الله يحفظك احفظ الله تجده تجاهك إذا سألت فاسأل الله وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك ولو اجتمعوا على أن يضروك بشيء لم يضروك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله عليك رفعت الأقلام وَجَفَّتِ الصُّحُفُ. Be mindful of Allah, and you'll find Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will preserve you, take care of you. Be mindful of Allah Azza wa Jalla by following the commands of Allah and abstaining from the prohibitions of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You'll find Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in front of you, guiding you. If you ask ask Allah alone. If you seek assistance, seek it from Allah alone. And know if all the people came together to benefit you with something, they shall not be able to benefit you with something except that which Allah has decreed for you. And if all the people came together to harm you, they shall not be able to harm you except with that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed against you. The pens have been lifted and the scrolls have dried. What a great advice that the Prophet ﷺ has given to him and given to us. That we are completely attached to Allah, and that comes, ayyuhal kiram, by knowing Allah. Knowing Allah Azza wa Jal through His names and attributes. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala taught us about Himself in the Quran. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala described Himself to us in the Quran. When you have these names and attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, it is upon us to learn them and to live by them. These names should be evident in our lives. We know that Allah Jalla fi'ulah, He is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the extremely, entirely merciful one. When we know that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He is the one who grants us mercy. We do not ever despair from that mercy. We do whatever we can to attain that mercy. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us how we can do that. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Obey Allah and the Messenger alayhi salatu salam, so that you can attain the mercy of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. By fulfilling the commandments of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, Allah will grant you that special mercy that He grants to the believers who are obedient to Him. When you know that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He is Ar-Raqib, the one who sees and surveillances everything that you do. You are one who's conscious of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When you are alone by yourself and no one can see you, إِذَا خَلَوْتَ بِرِيبَةٍ فِي ظُلْمَةٍ وَالنَّفْسُ دَاعِيَةٌ إِلَى الطُّغْيَانِ فَاسْتَحْيِ مِنْ نَظْرِ الْإِلَهِ وَقُلْ لَهَا إِنَّ الَّذِي خَلَقَ الظَّلَامَ يَرَانِي. When you're alone in the darkness and no one can see you, no one's aware of what you're doing, and your soul is calling you to do evil, to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal, to do that which angers Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, be shy of the sight of Allah and say to your soul, verily the one who created the darkness can see me. That is you being conscious of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When we have CCTV cameras around, and we know that it's recording us, how do we act? We are conscious of what we do because we know that others are going to see that, they are recording that, and we may be held accountable. But that CCTV camera does not record your audio. It does not know your intention. Allah Jalla fi'ula, He sees everything you do. He knows everything you do. He hears everything that you do. And He knows what your intentions are and that what you conceal in your heart. That should make you more conscious and fearful of Allah Azza wa Jal. We know that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He is the one that is the most generous, and He grants us all the blessings that we possess and everything that we have. But when we use these blessings to disobey Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that should make us feel a level of shame. Al-Hasan al-Basri, alayhi rahmatullah, one day he was reciting in the night the ayah in the Quran that Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. If you were to try to count the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jalla, you shall not be able to count them, to encompass them. He was reciting this verse, and whilst he was reciting it, he kept repeating it, crying. And then he was asked by those around him, Ya Aba Sa'id, why is it that you're crying when you recite this verse? And he responded by saying that there is not a time that we glance at something except that we glance at the blessings of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. He says that it makes me feel extremely, extremely ashamed or fearful that we use these blessings to disobey Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, because that is true failure. Now imagine this with me. I want you all to imagine something with me. Imagine you were alone and you had intended to do something that is prohibited, perhaps a crime. And then you started doing the crime. And then someone came in and saw you committing this crime. As soon as this person sees you, you stop what you are doing. You immediately drop what you're doing because you've been caught. And then this person who had just caught you, instead of reporting you, instead of exposing you, they decided to conceal your sin for you or your crime. Whenever you see that individual after that incident, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel a level of shame. You're going to feel shy. You're going to be grateful to that person as well. You're going to feel shame because this person knows something about you that others do not know. And despite that, this person hid this crime for you. They concealed it even though they were able to expose you. You are going to be extremely grateful to that person. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. But what about Allah, who we use His blessings to disobey Him, and He sees us, and He conceals those sins for us, and if we seek His forgiveness, He forgives us. That should make us extremely shy of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When I stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla in that salah, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has honored me to stand in front of Him, it should make me feel extremely shy that I have been disobeying Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps blessing me and keeps granting me opportunities to do better and to turn back to Him. And despite that, I keep insisting in doing these evil deeds, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps granting me chances and opportunities to change my ways. That's how the believer should feel in those incidents, at those times. When we know Allah Azza wa Jal like that, and the names of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala are present in our lives, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he says that whoever learns these names of Allah, he understands them, he lives by them, Allah Azza wa Jal will allow him to experience a paradise before the actual paradise. You are going to live in a paradise on this earth because Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, being with Allah and knowing Allah, that is where all comfort and goodness and greatness is. And that's precisely how those who preceded us were. Look at this incident. When the Prophet ﷺ was migrating from Mecca to Al-Madinah, him and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, they went to Jabal Thawr and they hid there. And now Quraysh, they put a bounty on the head of the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. They said whoever captures them, dead or alive, are going to receive 100 camels. All of Mecca is looking for the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. Now Quraysh, they came to the mountain and the cave that the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr are hiding in. Abu Bakr is terrified. He becomes anxious. He thinks that if we're caught and we get killed here, this is the end of the message. He's afraid for the Prophet ﷺ. He's extremely, extremely fearful. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, Ya Aba Bakr, ما ظنك باثنين الله ثالثهما. What do you think of two? Allah Azza wa Jalla, the third amongst them. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala documented that in the Quran. إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن Inna Allah ma'ana. When he said to his companion Abu Bakr, do not grieve, do not be sad, do not fear. Verily Allah Azza wa Jal is with us. As soon as Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he heard that statement, that completely changed the way he was feeling. He instantly felt tranquility. He instantly felt at peace. He felt serenity. Why? Because he knows what it means that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is with you. And that's why Ibn Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi, commenting on this ayah, he says that the greatest form of failure, the greatest form of loss, it is that you are going through hardship, you are going through a calamity, you are going through a difficulty, you are going through grief, and you do not have Allah Azza wa Jalla with you. Because we all experience those things. But sometimes when people go through these things, they go through it alone without Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because when you go through these hardships with Allah Azza wa Jalla being with you, it is as if you have not lost anything. You have everything that you need, because Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will ease that for you. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will be with you. Allah Azza wa Jalla will assist you. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will protect you. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will grant you relief. And that's precisely what Ibn Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi says, that in order for us to be those slaves of Allah, those servants of Allah, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is pleased with, to fulfill our purpose of life that Allah created us for, there are three pillars that we must constantly be doing and make a habit. Number one is that you're grateful to Allah. How are you grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal? You worship Allah more. Number two is that you're patient. You refrain from doing that which Allah has made haram. You are patient in obeying obeying Allah. When a calamity happens to you, you are patient and you restrain yourself from doing that which angers Allah Ta'ala. And the third, it is that you constantly seek forgiveness from Allah and repent to Allah Azza wa Jal whenever you disobey Him. Gratitude, patience, and seeking forgiveness. These three pillars, he says, are pillars of servitude. When you fulfill them, you will be a servant of Allah Ta'ala, who Allah Ta'ala will suffice. Like Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبَدًا وَيُخَوِّفُونَكَ بِالَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ وَمَن يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ هَادٍ. Isn't Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala going to suffice His slave? Allah will suffice you from all your worries. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will protect you from all that you fear. Allah Azza wa Jalla will take care of all your affairs. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, all that which you may stress about, your provision, your worldly matters, and your affairs of the hereafter, Allah Azza wa Jalla will suffice you regarding it. You will not have to worry about it. But in order for us to attain that, we must fulfill our side of the deal. We must be those true slaves of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When we are those slaves of Allah Jalla fi'ulah, that Allah Azza wa Jalla is pleased with, Allah Azza wa Jalla will make what seems impossible possible for you. What seems impossible will be possible for you because you have Allah. There's nothing impossible with Allah. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will change the laws of the universe for you if you are a true slave of Allah. And we find that in the Quran, where Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us about Ibrahim alayhi salam. And listen to this. You all know the famous story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who his people, when he destroyed their idols, they were trying to burn him alive. Look at this. All of the village, his relatives, those who knew him his whole life, they have all come together to burn him alive. Even to the extent that the women who were ill and sick, who did not expect to get better, they said, they made a vow that I hope I do not get better if I do not gather the wood that Ibrahim is going to be burnt with. Everyone is gathering the firewood. A huge fire is lit, and this fire is lit, and Ibrahim alayhi salam is brought to that fire. When he's taken towards it, he does not put up a struggle. He does not try to escape. He goes willingly towards it, and then they have a catapult waiting to throw him into the fire, and then Ibrahim willingly goes into that catapult, and then he alayhi salatu salam, he's approached by Jibreel alayhi salam, and he says to him, Ya Ibrahim, do you have a request? What do you think he responded with? At a time like this where your life's at risk, you are about to be killed, any help that you're offered, you would take it instantly, right? But look at Ibrahim alayhi salam. His whole life he's been calling the people to worship Allah alone, to call upon Allah alone, to rely upon Allah Jalla fi'ulah, to not seek anything from any human beings or any of the creation of Allah Azza wa Jalla, whether they are righteous people, angels or messengers, no matter what they are, only attach yourself to Allah. Is he going to contradict himself now? No. He says to Jibreel, as for you, I seek nothing, but I only seek from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then he says, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and He's the best disposer of my affairs. Ajib, that statement that he uttered, that dua, I find it extremely strange. If you were about to be thrown into the fire, if you were to make dua, what would your dua be? It would be, oh Allah, save me from that fire, right? He never once asked Allah to save him from the fire. And then he's asked, look at this now, it gets even more stranger. He alayhi salam is asked, Ya Ibrahim, what is the outcome that you're hoping for? His response was, whichever one of the two options is more beloved to Allah is beloved to me. Ajib. Yani if it's more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jalla that I'm burnt and I die, that's more beloved to me. And if it's more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal that I'm saved, that's more beloved to me. Completely relying upon Allah to the extent that he made his desires in line with what Allah Azza wa Jal desires. And that's exactly what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, alayhi rahmatullah, when he was asked about tawakkul, relying upon Allah Azza wa Jal, he says that reliance upon Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, it is cutting off from all the creation and hoping for nothing from the creation and making your desires and what you love in line with what Allah Azza wa Jal loves. That's precisely what Ibrahim alayhi salam demonstrated, a whole different level. And because of that true servitude to Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Tabaraka changed the laws of the universe. The laws of the universe that we know, Allah changed it. Allah made what seemed impossible possible for him. He was thrown into the fire. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَأَرَادُوا بِهِ كَيْدًا فَجَعَلْنَاهُمُ الْأَخْسَرِينَ. We said, oh fire, be cool and safe for Ibrahim. And then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said they were trying to plot against him to harm him, and we made them the losers, the failures. That is what your servitude for Allah Azza wa Jal can do. But it is upon us to be those who enslave themselves to Allah Azza wa Jal. Do not enslave yourself to other than Allah. We live in a time where people have enslaved themselves to other than Allah. There are those who have enslaved themselves to wealth and money. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Ta'isa abdul dinar, Ta'isa abdul dirham. He said that the loser, the failure is the one who has enslaved himself to money and wealth. All he does, he wakes up, it's that he needs to make money. He will do anything to make money. He will kill to make money. He will do anything necessary, whether it's lawful or unlawful, whether it's moral or immoral, whether it's ethical or unethical. He would do it in order to get to that wealth. That is the slave of wealth. We have others now who are chasing fame. We live in a time of social media that they worship fame, that they want to become famous. They are all in TikTok and Instagram and doing anything, even if it's the most foolish, idiotic thing, they would do it in order to get that fame because they worship that fame. That's all they're after. They are those who would do anything because they have enslaved themselves to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. They are those who enslave themselves to their evil desires. Anything their desires tell them to do, they do it and they fulfill it without giving any consideration to what Allah Azza wa Jal has ordained upon them. This is all different times of slavery. Unshackle yourselves from that slavery and free yourselves from it so that you can be amongst those who Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala honors and raises. Because when you enslave yourself to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, Allah will elevate you. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will raise you. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will raise you in this world and the next life, and so on. I believe Sheikh Abdul Rahman is here because he wants to tell me stop talking. Is that the case? He's gone. That means I can carry on. That servitude to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, it is precisely what we need to do. Now, I'm not going to go any further. The mashayikh and the ulama are here. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to benefit us with what we have heard. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to forgive our sins. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to have mercy upon us and to make us from those who hear this speech and follow the best of it. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to make us His true slaves that are enslaving themselves to Him alone. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to unshackle us from the chains of servitude to other than Him. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide us and to increase us in guidance and to guide others through us. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, just like He gathered us all here this evening, that He gathers us all in Jannat al-Firdaus al-A'la with our parents and our loved ones and all those who have rights upon us. إنه لذلك القادر عليه وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.